Now call on Graham Day to be followed by Brian Whittle. Up to 6 minutes, please, Mr. Day.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In preparing to contribute to the debate, I was slightly tempted to opt for a lazy cut-and-paste approach, because it's not so long ago, 69 days ago to be precise, that we last debated education here in this chamber. So much for education debates being a rarity here, by the way. And when I read through the Conservative motion, it genuinely felt like Groundhog Day, as it bore very considerable similarity to Stephen Kerr's opening speech at the end of September. In contributing to that debate, I praise the approach being taken by the Education Committee as a genuine cross-party endeavour to interrogate the condition of our education system in a balanced way, giving credit where it's due and criticism where and when it's merited. And I bemoaned the lack of a similar approach being adopted here in the Chamber itself, where, regrettably, oppositional politics overtakes offering measured and balanced analysis, though let me acknowledge Alec Rowley's contribution stands in contrast to that. As I said then, and repeat now, Presiding Officer, on education, as in other things, the Scottish Government isn't perfect, and yes, sometimes we in these benches need to acknowledge that. The Cabinet Secretary herself acknowledged the need for improvement, but nor is a motion like this one before us warranted. And by treating education as a political football, we as politicians not only let down those seeking the best from it, be they parents, pupils or professionals. Interestingly, my contribution back in September secured a ringing endorsement from none other than my good friend Stephen Kerr. He said, and I quote, "I completely take on board the message that he," that's me, imparted in his speech. Well, that Damascene conversion to adopting a considered, reasoned approach didn't last long, did it? Because here we are, less than 10 weeks on, and we're debating a motion which reads like a rant. Of course, Presiding Officer, I say, Presiding Officer, this is all in marked contrast to the positivity that I pick up when I'm visiting schools across my constituency. Of course, things aren't perfect in education. There are challenges to be faced, changes needed to be made. But there's so much to celebrate in our education system, of course.
Stephen Kerr.
Graham Day is making a fair point, as usual. He's making a fair point. But in my speech today, I laid out what the problems were, asked, I think, reasonable questions, serious questions about serious issues, and ended with a call for us to unite, to work together. But it depends on the basis of the government's willingness to accept there are challenges and problems that we should work on. What we get continually is nothing but self-congratulation.
Graham Day.
Environment for a debate in this chamber.
Well, if that's how Stephen Kerr interprets his contribution today, he is no loss to the diplomatic corps, that's for sure. As I said, there's so much to celebrate in our education system. I've visited a large number of schools in my constituency over the last few months, and the whole spirit and the ethos in the schools is in such marked contrast to the depressingly negative Conservative motions. And I want to focus on something else, Presiding Officer. We hear all this negativity today, but let's look at something else. When the SNP came to power in 2007, just 61.6% of Scotland's schools were in good or satisfactory condition. The most recently available figures show that the number has risen to 91.7%. That's a fact. In Angus, the number is 94%. Now, I think we would all agree good quality teaching environments for our kids and our teachers are really important. I've seen enormous progress in my constituency, and in fact, Forfar Academy, Stephen Kerr's old school, which serves some of my Sidlaw constituents, now is a brand new community campus. And at long last, we're in the planning process to give Montefieth the state-of-the-art secondary school it deserves. Now, let's be clear, the credit for these advances does not rest with the SNP government alone. These builds and others before them were delivered in partnership with local authority administrations of various political colours. But I say to the opposition, if we're going to criticise this government's record in education, then at least do so by recognising at the same time the success stories, which include bringing up to an acceptable standard in excess of 1,000 schools on the SNP's watch. And let's also recognise that just as credit for these advances is jointly due to government and local councils, so the responsibility for the delivery of school education, and with that accompanying credit or criticism, is surely to be shared too. The government may set their strategic agenda, but it's local education departments and, of course, individual schools which deliver. And if schools and councils are rightly praised for positive exam performance, for example, then it surely follows that responsibility, at least in part, when things aren't going so well, also lies at their door. And I would contend that's specifically the case when it comes to the very important issue of threats and violence directed at teachers, and specifically the reporting of these. The Presiding Officer, whilst my contribution has largely been schools-focused, I recognise there is, of course, a bigger picture. And I'm pleased to serve on the Education Committee of this Parliament, which, in addition to the work it's done over recent months on considering progress around the attainment challenge, has been looking at challenges facing universities and colleges. And I suspect there will be future opportunities to explore these topics in this chamber. And I look forward to that. And I hope that we can do so in a measured and balanced way, setting aside the theatre which too often overshadows genuine interrogation of matters here. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, I say this to the opposition. The criticisms of the performance of this government on aspects of education would be more credible if they could occasionally bring themselves to acknowledge the many positive achievements in this regard. And their demands for money for education in all its guises, when the Scottish Government is under such pressure, would also carry some credibility if once in a while they identified from where they believed the funding could be sourced. And in the case of the Tories, a dose of self-awareness wouldn't go amiss either, given their role, in the woeful mismanagement of the economy and the impact that has on the financial position the government finds itself in Scotland, with all the implications that has for education. Presiding Officer.